born in the eye of the storm. A crowd of strangers making up the rules as they go. Odd jobs and favors. In a time that waits for no man, you stopped it in its tracks. I guess that was your plan. Because you're wild, 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 wild. You're wild, 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 wild. You came around as it took its toll and papered over the cracks in our souls, sitting in the sunset, making love out of nothing. Once lost and now we're found, and I don't need to get into it now. I know that I don't want to know anybody but you, because you're wild, 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 wild. 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 It was such a treat to meet you, that's what everyone will say. It was well worth the wait, much better this way. Irish eyes and a Welsh nose gave us something to be hopeful for. A summer on the coast, somewhere on the coast, where it's wild, where it's wild, wild. Because you're wild, 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 wild. 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 Do 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 do